All right, so welcome everyone to our March Cascading Growth event. How is it already March? The year is flying in. I'm so delighted to be joined today by Ciara Keating, who I'll be introducing more fully in just a moment. But just before we start, a quick introduction to what these events are all about in case you haven't come across one of them before. So here at Adaptus, we really believe in the power of conversation as a way to spark insights and inspire growth. And we became really clear last year that this was something we wanted to do more often, and that we wanted to intentionally create space for these conversations to happen so that we could be doing more organic learning from each other, from each other's experiences, and create opportunities for connection. And this awareness really came from us taking some time to reflect on our own values as an organization. And you'll see that the values we restructured, reclarified for ourselves last year are now shared on the screen. And we found a lot of benefit from taking some time to re-clarify our values as an organization. And you'll see, or hopefully you'll see that in these values here, courageous insight, collaborative synergy, and cascading growth, a lot of these feed into what we're hoping to accomplish in these little sessions, these little conversations. So creating space for insight, creating space for connection and collaboration, and creating space for growth to hopefully come from these conversations, the insights that are contained within. And it's our sincere hope that you take any inspiration and ideas that you take from these conversations and share them outwards, therefore, hopefully creating a ripple or a cascade effect where these insights are shared and have a broader impact. So, very excited, as I said, to dive into today's conversation, and I'm delighted to invite Ciara. Ciara, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Ciara, your audio for some reason
Let's just
seems...
grab it.
Oh, there it's back.
Am I back? Lovely.
You're back. Fabulous. So welcome. Everyone, Ciara is someone that I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years now through Adaptus. And she's done a lot of work with our CEO, Celine Mullins. And it's always just such a pleasure working with you and having the opportunity to get to know you, Ciara, through that work. So we're very excited to have you join us today. Ciara is an associate director at Matheson. She has incredible experience in HR, in talent development, and in supporting learning and development in organizations. And we're very excited to tap into your knowledge and your experience today, Ciara, and learn from what you've learned. So I might just pass over to you now to tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe share a little bit about your background and what you are doing today. Sorry, Ciara, your audio for some reason has just gone again there.
Am I back now?
You're back. Yes.
Okay, lovely. Okay, great. Okay, well, we'll hope that that's the audio issue sorted. Yeah, just a huge thanks again, Annika, to yourself and Celine. It's lovely to have this chance to kind of have the chat. My background, I studied law originally in Galway, and I went on then afterwards to do a master's in dispute resolution. Um, and that's actually where I met my current manager and director of learning and development. And that'll kind of feed into some of my values later on as well. Um, and it was really when I was going through both my undergraduate and my law degree, I was really thinking, gosh, what do I really want to do? And I resisted that whole, to follow, I guess, the traditional trajectory of becoming a qualified solicitor. And while I was doing the master's, I ended up working in a small consultancy firm, which specialised in employment law and HR advisory. And that was really, it was scaling up big time, and they were really, really ambitious in terms of what they wanted to achieve. So it was a really ripe opportunity for me to just go in, and they were just looking for hands on the deck. And there was opportunity for growth, opportunity for responsibility, and I was there ready to take it. So that was a great, I guess, training ground and learning environment for me. And that's where I got into the training side of things. So at the time, it was very much so recession time. So a lot of the training that they were doing was on quite difficult topics. It was on redundancies, how to do disciplinary. So it was on the employment law HR side of training and development. And And what I found was I really enjoyed that connection with people when I was delivering, but found the topic just a little bit difficult and didn't always give me energy because it was a little bit kind of more challenging. And that's when I decided actually I'd love to do more of this, but also in the personal growth and that kind of personal development space. Around the time, actually, I remember when I was doing my master's, I went to a career guidance, person and kind of said, gosh, what am I going to do? Jobs weren't overly plentiful at the time, and it was a lot of, unpaid internships. And I kind of just valued myself. So I just didn't really want to kind of take anything, and I really wanted to be really intentional. So I
Mm.
remember at the time they said to me, go and, look up, I can't even remember, it was probably jobs.ie or whatever the jobs platforms at the time were, and, find your dream role. And I came back to them and it was a training coordinator in Google. um, was my dream role. And I think that's kind of funny because I don't know at the time that I necessarily thought that I was going to end up in learning and development, organizational development, but it's kind of funny in some ways. I was so on the money, and in other ways, I just didn't dream big enough that my dream role was a coordinator. So yeah, so my first role in Canva and Byrne was the small company, and they were just fantastic in terms of the opportunity. Like I say, I went on then to work in an accountancy firm in their consulting department. So Baker Tilly, Ryan Glennon, that became RSM Ireland. And again, I just had great support and sponsorship there for my career growth. And I was really brought under the wing of really some, senior influential people. But that said, I also worked really hard for it. And that again will feed into my values when I talk to you about that in a minute. And I loved all the training. So I was doing really, really great positive developmental piece. I was also doing, training around kind of dispute resolution, very much so still in the HR side of things as well. And I was also doing a lot of workplace investigations. So I was still in that kind of employment law, dispute resolution, really, really challenging piece where you see people that are that are really at a very difficult period in their lives. Uh, and it was around then that I had a conversation, and Nicola White reached out to me and she said, she was the training manager in Matheson at the time, and she said she was moving up to be the director. And she had reconnected with me having after I'd done the masters, and she said, look, she was looking to backfill her role as the training manager. Would I be interested? Uh, and again, I just jumped at the opportunity to, I guess, move in-house, and move away from that kind of consulting piece in-house because I really thought, gosh, wouldn't it be a great opportunity to deliver on the L&D side, but actually stay around for the change piece and really embedding it and seeing that kind of translating into culture and translating into impact. And that's what I guess really appealed to me in the shift to maths. And then there was also something maybe quite nice about the fact that I was kind of coming full circle back to the law,
Yep.
but not in the more traditional kind of way.
Mhm. What an interesting journey
Mm.
through,
Mm.
as is so often the case, isn't it, with life, right? We
Yeah.
we
So,
start out and we find ourselves in unexpected places, but also in these, there's so often these
mhm,
circle back moments, hey, where
mhm.
these
But
interesting,
that was 9 years ago, Annika. So I'm going
yeah.
it's 9 years ago in May. And I remember my manager at the time when I was leaving my previous role, and she said, gosh, you'll be there 2 years, you'll get bored. I think I was saying this, Lorraine's on the call. I say this
Mm,
to Lorraine, somebody on the team did today. She said, you'll get bored. Uh, and I'm struck myself that I'm still in Matheson 9 years later, and it's because it
yeah,
does align with an awful lot of my values, and it
yeah.
does give me, that kind of peace that I need. So it's I think if I'm being really honest, there's probably many a times over the years that I thought about, gosh, maybe it's time to change, but when you really kind of analyze where you are most aligned, it gives me so much of what I need. So I'm there 9 years. I'm the associate director. I think I've been the associate director maybe for the last 4 years or so. We've a fantastic team of 11 people across the learning and development function. And I guess the role has just continuously evolved and expanded over those 9 years. And I guess that variety is one of the things that's really kind of kept me there and kept me really interested in terms of kind of the growth and that impact piece. So So that's where I am today. And then I'm also, and I see Jacqueline's on the call there as well. I'm also doing a coaching qualification at the moment with Smurfit. And Jacqueline is a colleague of mine on the course as well. So that's where I am, I guess, in terms of my professional side of things, my continuous kind of development. And then on a personal level, I've just returned back from maternity leave. So I've had two young babies, came back mid-February. And yeah, that's where I am on both personal and professional.
Love happening across all spheres of your life, it sounds
Mm.
like. Yeah, wonderful. I would love to hear more about your values and where you feel they've played a role in this whole wonderful journey that you've just shared with us that's brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? When you think about your values and then you really think about the incidences of where they've really kind of played a part. And I mean, a lot of the values that helped me get to where kind of I am today is that kind of hard work, that ambition, that uh, that clarity of kind of direction and focus. But the big values, I guess, that have been consistent, I think, through my different stages of life, are around that reciprocity, and my family. And they're probably two of kind of my really core values that guide me in everything. And the reciprocity one is kind of interesting because I think that continuously comes up for me in terms of where I'm both triggered mostly, but also where I'm really energized.
Mm.
And when I think of how that's kind of played a part, I remember in my early 20s, it was first when, friends, friendships that just were no longer serving, or friendships that maybe I felt I was investing in more. And then it turned into kind of where I was really energized, where it was those relationships maybe in work and where people did sponsor you, but it's because I was giving a lot and they were
Yeah.
giving a lot to me. I felt, people had my back. And that was kind of as I was growing up, professionally, that reciprocity of me putting in that hard work, but also people recognizing that and actually giving me opportunities and platforms. And now I think it's kind of playing a role again in kind of me as the manager and me as the leader in terms of kind of how I engage and work with people, and like the opportunity, I guess, to really invest in the relationships that I have with people. But I find myself I guess I find myself, yeah, I guess I keep saying the word most energized, but I find where we thrive is when I've got those really, really strong mutual connections in terms of the relationships that I have. And that's why I know the reciprocity really triggers me, but it also really energizes me. And Celine was doing a session yesterday with us, and it was so brilliant. But she's talking about the Cartman drama triangle. And that to me, and the empowerment triangle, that to me was like reciprocity in a nutshell, is that when I don't feel like I've got that give and take in my relationships with people, I'm drawn into that drama triangle. And yet when I do have that reciprocity, I'm alive and kicking in that kind of empowerment piece. So that's definitely a core value. The other one then is the family, and I guess that's probably a staple for, I guess it's probably quite a typical value and a staple value for a lot of people. But I think it's relevant in terms of my professional growth, in that, I would have been thinking along at different stages of my career, got where, even 5 years ago or 4 years ago when I was starting a family, where am I going to have my family? Am I going to stay in Maths, I'm going to move? And there's huge alignment there with my value of family and the way that Matheson, I guess, values family and the flexibility there and the recognition. And then the other piece that we were just talking about before on the call is that value of time. And that's maybe a little bit more of a life stage piece, but uh, over the last probably 3 4 years, I've really kind of found myself saying, where am I getting my energy? How am I spending my time? Is it filling my cup? And that is something, again, I think when you talk about your values, it's something that you come back to regularly. And I will always say, at the start of each weekend with my husband, what do we need to do to fill our cup? Like, what's the 1 hour that we need to spend this weekend? And it's the same, I think, from a work perspective, as how are we spending our time to get that most impact? Because as we were just having a chat before the call, there is an infinite amount of time, and I guess we need to be able to use our kind of time and energy in a way that best serves us, but best serves other people as well.
Mhm. I love that you've brought time in as a value. I think that it's the first time I've ever heard anyone really highlight time as one of their top
Mhm.
values. And that to me is so interesting and also so powerful. In my own work, I spend a lot of time delivering training and facilitating conversations around time management. And just the notion of really making that powerful commitment to valuing time strikes me as an important piece to actually being effective then in managing your time. Have you found that in your experience?
Yeah, but I think I also find it, and I know we're going to come on to the talent development piece, but quite often, like we're asking people to give up their time as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just in terms of how I'm spending my time, but like we are really, really, I would say tough on ourselves and saying, God, is this a worthwhile use of other people's time? Because it is so precious, and particularly post-COVID.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and to your point, Annika, like it's also given me permission, to kind of lean into different things in my life where I've said, Ciara, take all the unpaid leave. Take,
Yeah.
what's going to give you back time? And then the other piece really is how am I spending, my time in terms of is it quality? Is it presence with uh my family after I shut down the laptop? Is it presence with the one-to-ones that we're having on the team? Is it so I think that piece of time, yeah, it keeps coming up. And I think the time management piece, it's interesting because we do a huge piece on our leadership development program that we do with Judge, in over in Cambridge University. And there's the time management piece, but then there's also that kind of, yeah, that value of time and actually valuing our own time. And what if we valued our own time? How could we really, what would we do differently if we really valued our own time? Um, and others. So yeah.
That's a very powerful question in my opinion, and something that would, lead to its own fascinating discussion unto itself. Honestly. Yeah. Is there a time in your life or an experience or an event, that you experienced in your life that really clarified that these are your values, that these values are sort of top of the list for you?
Um, yes, the one that's I think the one that springs to mind probably is the piece around family. And I think that just, I mean, it's probably because of this stuff happening today, but it's just, I think the family piece comes up nearly in every single decision, and every single interaction. And it's really interesting. I had something happened in my own family over the last kind of 24 hours. My sister's going into a surgery, and it's it's clarifying the support that you have around you. It's the team that are just wrapping themselves around me, in Matheson, that are saying, gosh, what do we need to do, Ciara? What can we take off your plate? How do where do you need to be there? Um, it's going back to your childhood and seeing how my family, rallied around our grandparents when they got sick. Uh, it's it's the support, I think, of continuously. I've always had my family have always been there, that I've kind of been your biggest cheerleaders and your biggest supporters. So I don't know if there's one incident, Annika, that I would say really kind of clarifies it. But for me, it's the fact that it keeps coming back up in how I live my life kind of every day, and how I say, gosh, I'm in the right place of where I need to be, um, both personally and from a career perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And so nice to hear you speak to that alignment that you feel where you're working, and that there is an equal value of family in the organization that supports you in your valuing of family.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, that
yeah.
sounds quite important and quite meaningful.
And that nearly layers the values, because it's layering the reciprocity of, I will work hard and deliver on what we need to and work, but
Yeah.
equally I need the support to be able to deliver on what is important to me outside of work. So it's,
Yeah.
your values kind of start to become one then in some respect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, based on your experience, how do personal and organizational values influence talent development?
Mm. Yes. I almost feel like they're the bottom layer of nearly Maslow's hierarchy of needs and everything
Mm.
that we kind of do. And I know I'm kind of speaking to the converted when I say that because you guys are all about values. But when I think about the values piece from an individual perspective, and Peter Drucker has a quote, and it resonates with me often is, and it's to succeed in life, you must first learn who you are.
Mm.
Um, and I think, there's nearly a bravery and a vulnerability for you to actually really connect with what are your personal values,
Yeah.
um, and how are they aligning with what you do, or showing up for you and what you do. But I think in terms of how do your individual values impact the talent development piece, we continuously, as part of the programs, try to encourage people to be as authentic as they can.
Mhm.
And again, we were having a conversation about this yesterday. We had a team away day and a strategy day. I see Kelly's on the call. She'll miss them, I'm sure, from when she was part of the Matheson team. Um, but I think in talent development, you get the privilege, and I think we really value this privilege of being able to work with people at every stage of their career development. But then that also coincides with every stage, typically, of their life, stages as well.
Yeah.
And I think your values as you do go through your career and you do go through your life can often evolve. But also I think as you kind of move from that early talent who we would work with right up to, experienced talent, um, you get a little bit more confident in who you are as a person, and
Mhm.
what you stand for and what you want to represent. So I think what we try to do on the talent development agenda is create space for people to really connect and step back and say, well, actually, who am I? What are my values? How do they feed into who I am as an authentic leader or as an authentic, colleague? Because people want, and we talk about trust an awful lot in what we do in professional services, and I think that's probably across sector. But one of the common phrases that we would use is, people do business with people they like and trust.
Mm.
And I think when we think of people we like and trust, you want to know that I'm dealing with the real you. And that's
Mhm.
the authenticity piece. And I think the values is a bravery, really, and a vulnerability to be true to yourself on what your values are, but also then a bravery and a vulnerability to actually, be confident to communicate them, articulate what your needs are. Um, so I think that's probably where the individual values feeds in to the talent development is we aim to create space for people to get and connect with what their personal values are, and then how do they feed in to who they are and how they're kind of showing up. And then on the organizational piece, they are just definitely the bedrock of everything that we do. Um, uh, and I think, no more, we've seen it significantly over the last number of years around, the need to be agile, the need to be responsive. And I feel like when you have your values there, and in Matheson, our values are partnership, respect, innovation, diversity, and entrepreneurship. When you have your values there, it enables talent development to be really responsive and agile to what the business needs are because you're guided by what those values are. And a really good example for me that crystallizes that is when we came back to the office post COVID. And actually, it was after my first maternity. So it was after COVID. I was on maternity leave for maybe another 6 months after we came back to the office. When I came back to the office, my manager said to me, Ciara, what we're doing on the kind of our programs and our skills, it just doesn't feel like it fits anymore. We need to really kind of think about it. And when we did think about it, actually, we went right back to what are our values and how do our values from a talent organization values drive the talent development agenda in this new way of working. Um, and we said, oh gosh, if we were really driving partnership and if we were really being innovative and if we were really being entrepreneurial in the sense of what does the business need, but what do the people in the business need? What we basically kind of identified, and this is different to the way all law firms typically run their programs, as we said, gosh, people need that connection. They need, they want a lot more autonomy about how they spend their time and about what skills they're focusing on. We want to respect people's right to choose what the right skills program is for them. And that wasn't the way we traditionally did it. And it's not the way law firms traditionally run their talent development programs. They run it by cohort. They run it by saying, gosh, you've got this number of years experience. So these are the skills that you must need.
Yeah,
And what they also do is they say, let's put all the lawyers in the room to work on those skills. And and what we said after COVID was, gosh, if we were really living our values of partnership, why wouldn't we put everyone across the full business in business services and in the legal departments? Why don't we put them in, give them the choice to be in together, give them the choice to build those connections and those relationships, and give people the choice to choose the programs that they want to be on, aligned to where they are in their career journey, and where they are in their life stage as well. So I think for us, we were able to completely overhaul the way that we ran our skills programs, and our talent development initiatives, but we could bring the business and influence the business that this is the right move to make because we are so aligned to the firm's values. So that was staying true, but everything else was changing.
it sounds like they were a real guiding light through that process of change.
Among many others.
Yeah. And I'm curious, it sounds like there's a real, like that the values are really alive at Matheson. They're not
Yeah.
just words on a wall,
They're
from your,
also words on a wall.
yes.
But yes.
Yeah. And what do you think helps create that aliveness, like where people actually know the values and are thinking about them and coming back to them as an anchor or a guiding light? What helps create that in an
Mm.
organization?
I think it's many things. It's never just one thing. And I think
Yeah.
it's, our managing partner, Michael Jackson, is really, really passionate about our values. So I think it's very top down.
Yeah.
Um, because he's passionate about our values, the systems and structures support,
Of course.
that commitment. So I think a lot, all of our objective setting, a lot of our reward systems, um, a lot of the ways that we run initiatives are all aligned to our values. So our values come in at nearly every point. You can't really avoid them.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think the other piece is, it's not just around kind of that it is around that top down piece, but actually, and for anyone not working kind of in professional services or in law firms, like we have our managing partner, which is the equivalent of the CEO, but then you also have all of your partners who are stakeholders in the business. Um, so we would actively engage with those senior leaders as part of our talent development initiatives to talk about their personal values, and for them to be really authentic and vulnerable, to open up our programs and our sessions, to be part and partner with us in the delivery, but also partner with the likes of yourselves. And you guys would have experienced that, where you have different leaders or people from the business coming in and saying, gosh, this isn't just a program on feedback and delegation. It's not just a program on change management. But this is how it really aligns to what we're trying to achieve. And I think that's the piece for us that keeps it really alive, is when we keep talking about it, but also keep role modeling
Mhm.
that connection between the organization values, but also what individual people stand for. And it gives people permission then, I think, to be a bit more authentic and connect to what their individual values are.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And it sounds like, yeah, there's this real intentionality behind it in all
Mhm.
levels of the organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Are there any other important lessons that you feel you've learned in your career, focusing in on talent development and learning and development in organizations that you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, lots of lessons. And I often have this conversation, myself and Nicola, is talent development or is learning and development, does it encapsulate everything?
Mm,
That really, and I don't mean we do, but that, like, everyone in our team and our function, not just in Matheson, but in functions, across many different organizations and sectors. But I think the biggest lesson is that actually, like, talent development really is, it's so much more than that. It's employee experience. You are there for people as they're going through their life stages. You're there for their career transitions. You're there for the tough moments. You're there for the brilliant moments when they're promoted. Um, uh, you're a temperature check for the business in terms of how are people. So when people say, our people are our best asset, and, we're a people-focused business, I think everyone that works across talent development has an opportunity in every interaction to get a gauge how are people really doing? So I think that's probably, I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons over the 9 years, that actually you've an opportunity to have such an impact on individuals, but also on teams, on organizations. And the biggest lesson, probably, I think, for me and for us, is that, do not be or feel confined
Mm.
by talent development being, narrowed to the likes of skills, because it is so much more than that. It's culture, it's a business driver. And I think that's the piece of that, actually talent development for me, I think, is a really key enabler of businesses to be really responsive and really agile. And again, to go back to Peter Drucker, that whole like culture eat strategy for breakfast. Like I feel that talent development actually is, it's almost like talent development, it eats culture and strategy for breakfast, because when we run talent development programs, really what
Yeah.
we're doing is we're change agents for culture, we're change agents for delivering on strategy. Um, the message, what skills are we putting on? How are we equipping people? What is the messaging that we're sending out? How are we aligning it? What are we encouraging people to really connect with and reflect on? And I think that goes back to, again, the other piece around, we are so much more than talent development.
Yeah.
Um, and that for me is really rewarding, and impactful.
Mhm. Yeah. There's so many interesting pieces in what you just said there, but I love how you're connecting it back to the humans involved, and
Mm,
your point about being there as people's lives develop and being through different stages of life development. That really strikes me as something that's really meaningful to acknowledge, that yeah, you're developing people, not just talent.
mm, mm,
And that there's this real value and meaning in partnering with people across a period of time and everything that comes with that.
mm.
Yes, their talent and their skills development, but also their life as it develops, and they themselves as a human as they develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'm thinking about a conversation I had with Lorraine, and she kind of reminded me of those kind of self-limiting beliefs, and
Mm.
the role that they can play in people's lives. And I think, those self-limiting beliefs are really where you're challenged by, will I live my values, or will I let my self-limiting beliefs,
Hmm.
become a little bit bigger than me? And I think that's the nice opportunity for talent development, is you get to be the little gentle nudge and the
Hmm.
supporter in the corner for people to say, shine bright, be big.
Hmm. Yeah, which is something we all need.
Mm.
I really believe that we all need someone in our corner nudging us from time to time and
Oh,
reminding
we
us.
do, Annika. It's tough. Life
Yeah,
is tough.
yeah,
Business is tough.
yeah,
And yes, we need to get stuff done, and we're not going to be able to take the toughness away. But yes, we can be so much more compassionate and empathetic in how we do it,
yeah,
and empowering to people. Yeah.
yeah. So it sounds like relationship building is really at the heart of what you do, and
Mm.
connecting with people as a foundation, much as you said earlier, that the values and knowing the self is sort of a foundational piece to then going on and developing. It sounds like you connecting with the people you work with and forming those relationships is really
Mhm.
foundation for everything that comes after.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, and again, that's, yeah, I mean, that's a nutshell. I didn't say it earlier on, but actually, that's a huge piece for us in talent development, is how are we creating those connections and that sense of
Yeah.
community. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for joining those dots for me.
This has been such a pleasure. I am excited to open up the conversation now and hear from who's with us, if there's questions or comments to kind of add to what you've said. So I will just turn off the recording. Thank you everyone who has joined us for the recording, and we'll see you in the next one.